UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jenn Durrell.
Well, welcome everybody to Talking Weird Live. And this is the first live we've done with an actual guest, which is super exciting. Our guest tonight, he was once known as the Psychic Priest. He worked alongside the famous paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren, on several haunting and possession cases. He was ordained in the Episcopal Church, and he's also been a stage magician, a teacher, an author, an actor, and a hypnotherapist. So it's our great pleasure to welcome back to the show, Edd Schultz.
Hello.
Hey, Ed. Hey. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. Can I say hey babies?
Yeah. We didn't do that yet, did we?
You didn't? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if we could do the hey baby now we were doing it live with a guest. Because we used to record the intros after we'd recorded the guest. So Jen and I, would always start the show with, we'll do it just so nobody's disappointed. Hey, baby.
Oh. Hey, baby.
Hey, babies.
Hey, baby.
Okay, we can keep the shtick maybe.
Yeah.
Thanks to Ed. Now, before we came on, when we were sitting in, I guess, I don't know what you call it on StreamYard, the green room or something, we were having a chat, you and I, Ed, and you brought up something which I found fascinating, that you have a multi-tiered approach to the paranormal. Like, you don't look at it from one angle, you look at it from a few different angles. Could you maybe just tell the audience what you told me before we started?
Sure. I think one of the difficulties in talking about paranormal things is that often people will come from one particular point of view. Now, what I mean by that is because of my training and my background, I have a degree in philosophy. So I come at things from a philosophical point of view. I also have a background in psychology of religion. So I come from a psychological point of view and a theological point of view. And having been a magician, I also come from that point of view. So I don't just say, this is the way it is, period. You know, I realize that anything in human nature is complex. It's not one-sided, just like a diamond. So I like to think of my approach to the paranormal, the supernatural, the mystical, etc., as being at least a four-tiered approach. And I think that helps keep me centered, because if you just come from one approach, then you often get, I hate to use a term like lunatic fringe, but you kind of get stuck with just seeing things from one point of view, and then it's hard for you to see something else. And we'll talk about that sort of thing a little bit more later on.
Yeah, it's a healthy way to look at it's a healthy way of looking at the phenomenon, I think, to take the multi-tiered approach.
I think so too.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Warrens a little bit, just in case somebody didn't see your first episode with us. Can you tell us how you met them and what type of work you did with them?
Okay, sure. I first met Ed and Lorraine Warren back, I think it was probably about 1976, maybe 1977. I was working at an Episcopal Church in Ridgefield, Connecticut, and I had just begun to form with a friend of mine, because I've always had an interest in the supernatural, the paranormal, the mystical, all of those sorts of things. And I had been lecturing about the church and the occult, that is, the church's response to the occult phenomena that was all going on in the 70s, The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, all of these sorts of things. And I had helped to form an organization called the Foundation for Christian Psychic Research. And one of the things that we needed to do in the early stages was to get some people on board and the board of directors who knew about various aspects of the paranormal. And we also, from a practical point of view, were looking for ways that we could raise funds. Well, my friend Chris, who was the co-founder, had heard about Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they were giving a presentation at a local high school. So we went to see them. and were very impressed with their presentation, impressed with them as people, and were fascinated by what they had to say, the story of how they got into what they were doing, and a lot of the cases that they investigated. So we went up backstage after it was over, introduced ourselves, told them what we were doing, and said we'd be interested in talking with you more about maybe being a part of our group, and B, would you be interested in doing one of your lectures as a fundraiser for us? And of course, they responded positively to both of those. They invited us to their home, and we talked over all of this sort of stuff. And while I was there in their home, they played a tape recording for me of an exorcism that they had taken part in on a young woman in New Jersey, whom they felt was either possessed by demons or spirits or something like that. And they said, Father Ed, we need an exorcist. Do you think you could help us out? Mm-hmm. Now, previous to that, I had never done an exorcism. I had seen the movie The Exorcist and was fascinated by it, and bought books on exorcism. Mm-hmm. So I had a book learning knowledge of the whole field, but had never done it for real. So, of course, being at the time, I think I was probably about 25, 26 or something like that. Being a young priest involved in all this sort of stuff, I said, yes, I will do it. And so Ed and Lorraine brought this young woman to our church, and the head priest at the church and I performed an exorcism. I had gathered material from, at that time, there were no official exorcists in the Episcopal Church. Mm-hmm. In the Church of England, that's a different story. So I had a lot of materials that had been published by the Church of England on exorcism and those sorts of things. So I had a ritual that I could use, because the Episcopal Church didn't have a ritual for exorcism, but I had one. And we did that with Pat. Pat was her name. And it was not the Hollywood head rotating, green goddess dressing, spewing out of the mouth, yelling and screaming and all that sort of stuff. It was not that kind of exorcism. It was very quiet. And again, I think it had a lot to do with my approach to what I was doing. And so Ed and Lorraine, after that, she seemed to be fine, doing well. She went home to New Jersey. I heard from her family later on that she was still having some trouble. She was seeing some visions, seeing people talking to her, hearing voices, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I ended up going to New Jersey to see her at home. And the more I thought about this and the more I spoke with her, I came to the conclusion that, I thought that perhaps she was a natural medium. And what was happening was that there may have been spirits around where she lived, that sort of thing, maybe even in their house, who were just kind of wandering around and not knowing where to go, and were attracted to this young woman because she had some natural, mediumistic abilities, and trying to get some help from her. But she was just scared. She was, I don't think she was even 20 years old. She was probably 18, 19. Yeah. So I suggested to her, I told her what I thought was going on. And I suggested to her that because these were probably earthbound spirits who just could not move on to the next level of whatever, I said, when you experience these things, when you hear the voices, if you see the images, simply say to them, into God's hands, I commend your spirit. Mm-hmm. And I said, I am pretty sure that they will leave because you've now pointed them in the right direction. And she did that. And it seemed to work because, I spoke with her and her family later on, and they said, Pat is fine now. Whenever she has these experiences, she does what you told her and they go away. So that was my first experience with the Warrens. And they invited me then we visited a number of haunted houses and other things like that. And I would often do not so much an exorcism, but a house blessing. The idea being that if there are evil spirits, evil presences, whatever in the house, if you simply exorcise them, you're telling them to leave, and you're leaving a vacuum. And who knows what's going to come into the vacuum?
Right.
So my philosophy, my theology was, if you do a house blessing, what you're doing is, A, you are exorcising anything that's there, but you're also giving a house blessing, asking God's spirit to come into the house and to dwell in the house, which then protects the family and the house from anything evil coming in. And Ed and Lorraine and I think we did some lecturing together for a while. And they were wonderful people. I enjoyed working with them very much.
Yeah. It would have been so nice to have been able to meet them myself, but that's pretty awesome that you were able to work with them.
Yeah.
With some of those theological positions you mentioned then about maybe spirits being drawn to a woman or lost in a house or something, is that also the theology or the doctrine or the dogma of the Episcopalian Church, or is that something you developed yourself more? The idea that might be demonic. I would have thought, like, for example, I assume the Catholic Church would presume those kind of things were demonic rather than past spirits or something, or departed people, just as an example.
Right. Yeah. Well, the Episcopal Church doesn't have any official theology about these matters. As I said, the Church of England has at least had then. I'm kind of out of touch with all of this now, but they did. The Bishop of Exeter at one time had this study in exorcism and possession, and that's where I got a lot of the documentation that I used. And they did have a number of categories of possession that they would talk about, including possession by earthbound spirits, or possession by demonic influences. So that's really where I developed my theology of what I was doing, was from the Church of England rather than from the Episcopal Church in the U.S. The Episcopal Church just really didn't talk about it that much, except in some corners. There at that time there were some very charismatic Pentecostal oriented segments of the Episcopal Church, and they had their own theology about it. And as you mentioned, Dean, a lot of that, and this was one of the ways in which I felt that my different perspectives lent a little bit more of a healthy approach to it. So often I would simply hear from very, I hate to use a term like this, kind of very right-wing evangelical type people, was, it's all demonic, it's all the devil. And that bothered me because I felt that was kind of paranoid. Why would you not think that there are some of these things that are going on that are simply, quote, earthbound spirits who are trying to get to God? And their just immediate response was, no, it's the devil, it's the devil. Don't even talk to me about that. So I think that kind of one-sided approach is very dangerous. Because sometimes you can develop what I used to call a demonic paranoia, seeing the devil behind every bush. I mean, there is a scripture passage that says that the devil is like a roaring lion and he's behind the bush ready to come out and grab you. But if you spend your life thinking with that kind of approach, boy, I mean, you're not safe anywhere. And so what does that, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think that's always a point of contention for Jen and I, incidentally. I always tend to lean to a more demonic or trickster approach when somebody's dealing with a spirit. I tend to doubt its presentation. It's the same way as an analogy I would use is if I was a kid and a van pulled up outside my house and the guy was dressed as a clown and said, "Come on, kid, I got candies and puppies and we're going to Disneyland." I wouldn't believe it on face value. So I'm often reluctant to accept any paranormal apparition or manifestation necessarily is what it seems. So it's interesting to hear your interpretation on that, though, Ed.
Stranger danger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I also, as I mentioned before, I like to come at it too with a psychological bent. There are some times, and in my experience as an exorcist, I often came in contact with people who were coming to me for exorcism, feeling that they were possessed by demons or whatever. And in my counseling with them, and even in doing an exorcism eventually, or something like that, I often found that things that they were describing to me were really emotional difficulties that they were having.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, and they, like, I'll give you one example. I think I might have mentioned this in the other broadcast. There was a woman who said that she was possessed by all sorts of demons. And I said, okay, in the exorcism, one of the things that we do is we tell the demons to identify themselves. Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, in the movie The Exorcist, it was Pazuzu, who was an ancient Babylonian demon or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, this woman, as I was doing the exorcism, would say to me something like, spirit of laziness, spirit of irresponsibility. And I thought to myself, you're in a sense, she was doing a little psychotherapy there herself, psychoanalysis. She was telling me some of the, quote, sins that she felt she was guilty of, but she didn't want to take direct responsibility for them.
Yeah.
The devil made me do it. Was kind of it. So when I cast out the demons, I did it using those names, speaking the language that she was using. And she, at the end of it, she felt, and I felt that, things were fine. Now the spirits, these demonic spirits that had been possessing her, were gone.
Well, that's a practical application of your approach you were talking about before, where you look at this from different angles, because that sounds like you put on a therapeutical hat or a therapeutic hat when you were dealing with that.
Right. I would often, in my own mind at least, think of these as therapeutic exorcisms.
That makes sense.
Rather than simply a spiritual exorcism. I mean, that's not to say that the spiritual dimension is not there and was not there in my mind as I was doing it. But I felt that there, you need to have both, because you don't know exactly what it is. Whenever you're dealing with the paranormal, there is no way really to scientifically verify that a person is possessed by a demon or a spirit, or just their own imagination.
Right.
I mean, we don't have machines that can measure that. We don't have instruments that can measure that. We don't even have videos that can show the demons coming out of your body. So who knows?
Yeah.
But you have to proceed with certain understandings.
Right.
That, okay, if this is what's really going on, this is the way I need to think about this. And if that's A, and B, if this is the way things are actually happening, I need to think about this too. So I need to approach it from a number of different angles rather than just one. And I think that's where a lot of the yelling and screaming comes in when exorcisms are often done. There in the numerous exorcisms that I participated in, there was never any yelling and screaming. I didn't feel it was necessary. I didn't feel that I was in a fist fight with the devil,
right,
so to speak. I was there as a priest of the church with all of the power and the authority of God. Who's more powerful than that? No one, not even the devil. So if you feel that that's the power and the authority that you're bringing to the situation, it's a win-win situation. I know I'm not going to lose. Why should I fight?
Yeah.
I don't need to. It's like saying to a bully, all right, get out of here. Get out of my face. instead of getting all scared, the bully's going to hurt me, or something like that, or trying to fight back to the bully, because then the bully's going to fight back to you. But if you just say, look, you're a jerk, get out of my face, then they'll usually go away. Well, maybe you better not say you're a jerk.
Yeah, just show no fear. That works.
That's right. I'm not afraid of you. Get out of my face. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what I felt I was saying with the authority of the church to whatever was in there.
And that's how you kind of approach the paranormal too, Jen. I know you seem to have zero fear in your encounters, right?
I try.
Good.
But I do. Yeah, that's where I go to. If I do find that I get those emotions, because at first, if you're not used to it, of course, that's where you're going to go. But I will automatically retract it and get upset and let them know that it's not going to work. Yeah. So
good.
Now,
that's a healthy approach.
Now, Ed, did you have, or it sounds like most of your experiences working with the Warrens or blessing houses or conducting exorcisms, most of them seem to have been fairly successful. Are there anywhere you walked away from it feeling that somehow it hadn't worked, or that you should have approached it in a different way, or you were never disappointed with any result?
No. I always felt things were good. I always felt that there was not going to be a sequel to this.
That's good. That's good.
This is Conjuring 1. Not even Conjuring 1. It's just Conjuring.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, that's good that you had that experience, though, because, all the other stuff that we've heard and the awesome movies, they've come from those, and cases, it's good that you experienced that and not what.
And I kind of think too that one of the reasons that they were successful and that there were no sequels was because of the approach that I used when I came into it. I mean, there's no need for a sequel here because it's going to be done. And I think the instance with the young girl who came with the Warrens the first time, and again, remember, I was an amateur then, so I think my diagnostic skills had not yet been developed. The reason I needed to come back for a sequel with her was because I read things wrong in the first place. I had simply been told initially, okay, this girl is possessed by demonic spirits. So I proceeded under that assumption. But then as I listened to more and more of what she was saying, it sounded more and more to me as though these are not demonic spirits. These are just, lost souls, so to speak.
Right, yeah.
And they're looking for some help. So we take a different approach, and she's fine.
Have you had experiences in your private life since you left the priesthood where you've had encounters with spirits, or where somebody's asked for your help in dealing with something because they knew your background?
No. I try to keep my background extremely low key. I don't I don't usually tell people that I was an exorcist. I save that for special occasions like this.
Well, before we segue into,
so I'm outing myself here. If I let too many friends get a link to this, they're going to say, "Oh, shit, I didn't know that about you." But that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't read a lot of questions, but we just had an interesting one, and that is, what's your thought that people who are dead relatives might hang around the living? Do you think that happens, Ed, or happens often?
I don't know that I could say often, but I think so. Yes. I mean, I hear stories over the years of people who feel that their mother is there when they need her and things like that. I would tend to hope that most of these are circumstances where whoever these disembodied spirits are, if indeed that's what they are, they're there to comfort and help you rather than hurt you.
Yeah.
I think those who are malevolent usually are those who are confused, don't know where to go, so they're panicking. Imagine you're a spirit that's caught between this dimension and that dimension. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to get scared, and you're going to scare people around you who may pick you up.
Yeah.
So it may all be pretty innocent.
Right.
Do you think there are haunted locations, Ed, where spirits of the dead or something else stay in a particular location for perhaps an extended period of time, maybe even, decades or more? Or
I think, to me at least, I think that makes sense. Yes. I think on our previous broadcast, I may have told you about the house that I lived in Weymouth, Massachusetts, that we experienced an awful thing during the middle of the night where I felt that somebody had their hands on my chest, and I couldn't get up, and I couldn't get out of bed, and I couldn't talk, and all this sort of stuff. And our baby was crying in the next room, and I tried to get in there, but I couldn't. And then I happened to tell our landlady about this experience, and she said, we didn't want to tell you this when you first moved in, but this house used to be a barn. And the original owner hung himself in the barn in the location of your stairway that goes down to the back door. And so there you go. Mm-hmm. Was there something there? I tend to think that there probably was. And I did do an exorcism. Oh, you did? Of that, an exorcism and blessing of that stairway. And I had another priest come in and help me with it. Because I was pretty shaken up by the whole experience.
I bet. Did it work, though?
Yes. Yes.
That's good.
Yep. Never had any problems there before. After.
I think now real estate agents, if something or somebody has passed away or there's a so-called haunting, they have to include it. They have to tell them.
Okay.
It's so common. It's so common now that there's some type of residual energy left in a home or any type of space.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. We do have somebody that's asking this. I don't know if that's something that you do or not. Well, that's mine. Hang on a second. Still learning. She wanted to know if you do readings.
Okay. Excuse me. Are you doing readings? No, I used to get that question all the time. The answer is no, I don't do readings. We are later on in the broadcast here going to do an experiment in remote viewing, but I don't do readings for people. I'm not that kind of psychic.
Well, that's a segue, I guess, into remote viewing. Mm-hmm. Unless Jen had any other questions about the Warrens, were you satisfied? We can always have Ed back again and go down the Warren path more, because I know you've probably got hundreds of questions about that. But
one Warren thing before we go. I tried this organization that I belong to, or I started the Foundation for Christian Psychic Research. We used to publish a quarterly journal called Soul Searcher.
Oh, nice.
And we did. This one is dated winter, volume 1, number 2. What year? Probably 76 or something like that. Anyway, I was looking for a picture of myself with the Warrens, and I did not find one, but I did find an interview with Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Oh, nice.
That we did because because they did join our board of directors. So
that's great.
They helped us with a lot of things.
Oh,
too.
That's pretty cool.
So there we go. That's the Warrens. Bless their souls.
I'm sure when we have you back on again, Ed, we won't be able to leave the Warren connection alone. So I'm sure we'll revisit it again.
Yeah, I'm sure.
With more questions. Yeah. But I know Jen also has some remote viewing questions for you before we move into the experiment, which I'm so excited about.
Sure.
But having been somebody who had done exorcisms and had, psychic ability as well, were there things that you found similar when you transferred to remote viewing? Like, was there approaches you took, or was there a zone you got into that was similar psychically or spiritually, or did you find there was some kind of connection? Because they're not often talked about in the same breath. So I'm just curious if you see any connection between those things.
Yeah, I guess I did, but let me just tell you how I got into remote viewing first, and this will maybe answer your question. When I was very first ordained, and this again was back around 1974 or so, I took a course called Silva, Silva, mind control,
Mhm.
which was basically it's they since changed their name to the Silva method, because mind
Okay.
control sounds terrible.
Mhm.
But anyway, the idea was that you learn to control your own mind through alpha and theta brainwave training, done through
Okay.
kind of group hypnosis and self-hypnosis. And part of the idea, part of the theory behind that was, and this is how we relate to remote viewing, that everybody is able to, under the right circumstances, project their consciousness to any point or place in space. Where'd we go?
No, I'm just showing the website. So
Oh.
if anybody
Oh,
wants
okay.
to go to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm finding
Okay.
out all the really cool features. So go ahead. Sorry. Didn't mean to
Very good. That's okay. So the idea is that you are able, under the right circumstances, to project your consciousness to another place. And that used to be called clairvoyance, which is
Yeah.
French for clear seeing. But a couple of physicists, Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff from the Stanford Research
Yeah.
Institute, back in the 70s, coined the term remote viewing. And I just read tonight that they say that actually maybe Ingo Swann is the one who actually coined the term.
Yes.
He worked with Puthoff and Targ.
Mhm.
And their experiments, actually, I didn't remember this until I looked at a documentary before we came on the air. Puthoff and Targ actually worked with the CIA in trying to develop a sort of psychic espionage program for the U.S. government.
Mhm.
And what remote viewing is, the type of experiments that they would do is they would have the remote viewer, let's say in a classroom or something like that. Then they would send a couple of people out in the field to different locations. And these people out in the field would, at a specified time, look at the scene in front of them, look at the view in front of them, and try to absorb as many physical sensations as possible: colors, shapes, sizes, textures, smells, sounds, anything like that. And the remote viewer was back in the laboratory or the classroom, and they would have a pad of paper like I have with me tonight, and they would try to receive the impressions from these people who are out in the field.
Yeah.
And they would not receive clear, distinct, 100% focused images, but they would get these kind of, not exactly vague, but they would get these impressions of shapes and sizes and textures and things like that. And they would draw them, and then the people would come back, they would take photographs of where they were, and they would bring them back, and they would compare them with the notes. And most successful remote viewing is when somebody could look at the picture and say, well, that's about 60 to 70% accurate. So that, let's say, for example, that they were sent out and they were in a forest and there were trees all over the place. Well, if the remote viewer back home was drawing pictures of trees, or at least shapes of long cylindrical things and bushy round circles up the top, that would be considered a hit.
Yeah.
And the idea was, behind what they called the Stargate project at the time with the CIA, was that these psychics would try to, the CIA would give them coordinates, map coordinates, and they would try to mentally go there and take a look at what was going on.
How does that work?
Psychic espionage. And they did some pretty good stuff. There's if you go on YouTube and look up Russell Targ,
yes,
there is an interview with him in which he gives a lot of detail about this particular project. So when I was studying Silva mind control, they gave you a technique, of a relaxation technique, that they felt was helping you to go into an alpha level of consciousness, or maybe a theta level of consciousness, and that has to do with brainwave frequencies.
Mhm.
And then you could project your intelligence to different places and become aware of information that was taking place there. So that's how I learned to do remote viewing. And I tied that in with all of my theological and mystical stuff
Mhm.
by when I first went to the mind control lecture and they started talking about alpha and theta levels of consciousness. My immediate thought was, because I was just beginning to be a celebrant of the sacraments in the church, that the sacrament is supposed to be an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. And I thought to myself, okay, bread and wine and water and things like those are outward and visible signs. Where is this inward and spiritual stuff that we're talking about?
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, maybe this alpha and theta brainwave stuff has something to do with that. Maybe that's the level on which we communicate with the spiritual realm, with God.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what prayer and meditation
Yes.
are all about. When you pray, sure, it's good that you say the words out loud in church,
Mhm.
but you don't have to say them out loud in
No.
church.
Mhm.
You can say them in your mind. And if you're doing that, what's the implication? God is reading your mind.
Mhm.
God is communicating with you psychically. And when you are in meditation and you feel that somehow or another God is talking to you, what's happening? You're reading the mind of God. So it's all psychic stuff.
Yeah.
There you go. It's all related. And this whole thing about spirits and earthbound spirits and whatever,
Mhm.
once I started to learn about this brainwave frequency and subconscious mind stuff, it all began to make sense. It all began to
Mhm.
fall into place.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm
So there
totally
we are.
with you on that, because I've felt the same way like my whole life.
Good.
But since the foundation that you're part of was like Christian psychic research, right?
Mhm.
So did you ever have any issues with other people that were, I don't know, in that denomination or outside of it, to where they would have issues with you actually doing that type of research? Because I grew up Baptist,
Okay.
and that was
Yes.
like a huge no-no. So
Yes. Again, that's one of those things where I often encountered, again, with all due respect, sort of the fundamentalist evangelical wings of the church would immediately say, "Oh no, that's of the devil. That's the devil." You know,
Yep.
you can't. Don't do that. Don't do this meditation anymore. Don't do this silver mind. That's demonic. You're going to let evil spirits in. And I would get phone calls from people that there would be articles written about me in the local papers and the
Oh,
stuff that I
goodness.
was doing, and people, these people would read it, and I would get phone calls saying, "We want you to know that we're praying for you because you've forsaken your ordination vows and you've forsaken God and you've forsaken Jesus by doing these things. So we're praying for," and that's one of the reasons that I finally kind of got out of that business, so to
Yeah, I
speak, was
understand
because
that.
I was tired of being harassed
Yeah.
by
Mhm.
people who came from, again, one perspective,
Right. Mhm.
not a number of different perspectives, but just one perspective.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question, Dean?
It sure does.
Or Jen, I'm sorry, I forgot who asked the question.
It sure does.
Yeah, but even within the Episcopal Church, of course, the Episcopal Church has always been theologically pretty
Yeah.
liberal,
They're more open-minded, right?
and pretty open-minded. Yeah, sometimes I think too open-minded, but we won't get into that. But I did find resistance
Yeah, I would
often to
suspect
what
so.
I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of open-mindedness, I wonder do you feel yet like trying the remote viewing experiment, Ed?
Sure. I'm ready for it. I can't make any guarantees, but I'll do the best that I can.
Well, we're in your very
Okay.
capable hands, so you just tell us what we need to do.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna ask you to do this one at a time, because we'll
Okay.
try it. It doesn't take a long time, but we'll try it with both of you, with
Mhm.
each of you. But I need
Okay.
to have you do it separately because I don't want to get my
Right.
signals crossed as I'm doing it.
That would be too hard.
This is what I'm going to ask. This is what I'm going to ask you to do, and we'll start with Jen, ladies first.
Okay.
What I'd like you to do is just to
Focus.
just to look at something in the room,
Okay.
something that's not something that we cannot see on camera, because I don't
Right.
want to cheat. I don't want to. When we were talking about this earlier, there was a
Yeah.
mirror behind you, and I could see something, and
It's-
I don't want you to look at anything that I could see in the mirror.
Okay.
And I mean, if you wanted to, if you have a photograph on the table or the desk in front of you or something like that, look at the photograph.
Okay.
And I'm going to, in just a moment, because I need to kind of call your psychic phone number. I'm going to start describing what my impressions are, and I'll probably jot down some notes. And if what I'm seeing or sensing is accurate in any way, just give me a okay, yes,
Okay.
like that. So I know that that's the direction in which I should go. If I don't get a response from you, I'll know that I should move on and try to look at some other things that are there. Okay.
Should I concentrate on it? Or
Well, what I'd like you to do, as I said earlier with the remote viewing, just look at it.
Okay.
Try to think about whatever colors, shapes, sizes, textures. There may be any smells that may be associated with it, or sounds that may be associated with it. Okay, now I just have to take a second and call your psychic line here. Okay, I'm seeing something in the bottom right-hand corner. A sort of sweeping thing. I'm going to show you what my initial impression is. Does that make any sense, Jen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Okay. Another impression. Does this shape, sort of a straight thing, almost like an old peace sign? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. This isn't a dream catcher, is it, that you're looking at?
No.
One of those Indian things. That was a thought that came into my mind. But would that in any way resemble it? Is there something round?
Nope.
No. Okay. Just this basic shape. Okay. And you're in Missouri, right, Jen?
Yes.
The show me state.
Show me. Show me state.
Okay. And I'm got it red. Does the color red make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So we're getting closer. The number 8. Does the number 8 make any sense? Could be a shape. Okay.
It's close to it, but not exactly 8.
Okay. Is there a number associated with it then? Because that was my first.
There's a number of things.
A number of things. Okay. I'm getting an impression of somebody saying hi, and kind of waving their hand. Does that?
That doesn't surprise me.
That doesn't surprise you.
That has nothing to do with what I'm looking at.
Okay, that's one thing too that I need to mention. Even though I'm trying to zero in on something that you're looking at, I may accidentally pick up some things that are around there that are in your peripheral view. I remember doing this one time with Dean, and I was picking up a desk or something like that, and and I had different you had 2 desks, I think. but you weren't necessarily thinking about those in particular. I need to get back to Jen. I'm sorry. I
That's right.
Yeah.
need to reestablish my connection here.
Yeah.
Milk? Does milk make any sense?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Yarn. Is there yarn connected with this, or string?
It could possibly be. Yes.
Okay. Because the impression that I got was, and again, this may just be a similar kind of thing. It was kind of like a ball of red yarn. And now that I say yarn, I'm seeing knitting needles, but that's not necessary. That could be just me adding something in.
That could be part of it. It's
okay, good.
I don't
Thank
want to
you.
say too much, but what I have is
Okay,
something that's
okay,
probably hard.
okay. That's good. Okay. The next impression that I got, and I'm sure this is way out, was rabbit ears, like a television set of rabbit ears.
Okay, it doesn't have that, but it does make sense that you saw that.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll try to give you one or two more impressions, and then you can tell me what it is, and we'll see how well I did. I think what I've done is as far as I can go with this one.
Yeah.
So what were we looking at?
Well, I gave you something hard.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
It's got several aspects to it. So it is an organite pyramid with healing chakras.
Okay.
So you have possible, it's got the red in it. There's the red.
Okay.
String. It's supposed to help with EMF protection. So with the rabbit ears, I kind of it's a possibility. So yeah, I picked a hard one.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Now, yeah, when you mentioned chakras, I studied a little bit about that years ago, and I kind of remember a kind of figure eight type thing in some of the diagrams.
Actually, when you said that, I had a count, and I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I guess maybe there is it. Is there 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I don't remember how many chakras there are.
Am I not counting correctly? I guess I need 7. Nope, maybe there is 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Well,
7.
okay. What would you give me as a percentage, Dean, on that of accuracy?
I think I mean it was a very hard one.
Yeah, it was. I did pick.
I'd say maybe 50%, but I will tell quickly the story, which I found just bizarre when you were remote viewing here one time and you were talking about it.
Excuse me, just a second, Dean.
Yeah.
You did have that.
I don't know if you can.
There's
the pyramid.
True.
That's the big one. When you
that
got
is a big one. So, okay, I'd say more than 50 then because of that. Maybe 65.
More than 50 because you did get the pyramid. That's a big thing.
Okay, good.
But I remember you telling me to look in an old drawer, like an old drawer of an old desk.
Oh, right.
And I looked in there, and I kid you not, in the audience, I wouldn't believe this if somebody told me. And we were just getting into Ed's exorcist stories. And there was a copy of 40 and Times in the drawer on the right-hand side where he said to look. And the cover of it was like the Exorcist 50-year anniversary with that iconic, or whatever it was. I don't know if it was 50 or 30 or however many years, but it was that iconic photo of the Exorcist outside looking at the building. That was the cover of it. And I'm like, that's uncanny. So anyway, I had to share that because I remember at the time being quite freaked out when I saw it.
I was kind of freaked out when you told me about it.
I should have had it here next time. I have the issue here to hold up.
Yeah. So how long does it normally take someone that is remote viewing? Like you didn't have much time there because you did it really short.
No, usually, it usually doesn't take too long. It's usually about kind of like that because it can work two ways. I mean, the longer you do it, maybe the more and more you can fine tune it, but also the more and more you can get in the wrong direction. A lot of the remote viewing experiments that were done initially, they were not given feedback like you were giving me feedback.
Yes. Okay.
They would just draw their pictures, and then later on, the team would come back and tell them. which to me makes it more difficult, because when you get feedback, then you can focus in more sharply on something and get more impressions.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dean's turn.
I can't wait.
Ready, Dino?
I am. I sure am, Ed.
Okay. You have what you're looking at, right?
Okay. Sure. And
You have a target?
Focus.
I'll stay focused on it for you too.
Okay. And remember, think of whatever physical sensations, touch, sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell, that could be associated with what you're looking at.
Okay.
And I have to dial your psychic number, so to speak, here. First impression that I got was holy cow.
Okay. Okay.
And now this may be me going in the wrong direction, but I see something sort of like a fence. That may be where the holy cow came in, like a pasture. Okay, no, that's not it. Holy cow. Okay, now I'm getting an impression of something like the Loch Ness monster. That sort of dinosaurish shape. I'm going to draw my impression here, Dean, and you can just let me know if that makes any sense at all.
The significance more than the shape.
Okay, that's fine. Significance of the Loch Ness monster?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now here is a little bit of here's a little bit of my previous knowledge of you that might be creeping in. Is this a dinosaur that you're looking at?
No.
Okay. Because you had mentioned before that your daughter was fascinated by dinosaurs.
Yes.
She is.
And when we were talking about Loch Ness monster and whatever.
Yes,
okay.
She loves them.
Okay. So let's move away from dinosaurs here. People. I see a lot of people. Maybe a crowd of people. Or it could be just a bunch of little circles. Now, this could have no significance at all. I'm hearing the theme song to 77 Sunset Strip, the old detective show.
Huh.
I guess I'm not doing.
It's okay, I don't know how much to say. I was thinking of a TV theme show, but that wasn't the TV theme show I was thinking of.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, which is kind of weird, but
okay. What show?
Well, that'll give it away.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
unless you're good to go.
Okay. Well, let me. Now that I know sort of that, let me see what else I might be able to pick up, and this might be unfair because I have too much information at this point. No, no, I'm sorry, Dean. You're gonna have to tell me what it is.
Okay, I'll get it.
Not,
Hang on.
It's not working here. But if you show me what it is, I might be able to clarify some of my impressions. And maybe once we.
Aww,
where
that's
was
what
it?
that's what I bought.
I want to believe. Oh, okay.
Ah.
Okay.
I don't have my headphones on yet, so I can't actually hear. I'll throw them right on.
The X-Files.
The X-Files, yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Actually-
okay. I guess this, well,
My phone does it too.
yeah. I guess my Loch Ness monster doesn't exactly look like a flying
But
saucer.
you have a flying saucer.
Well, I just put that on.
Wow.
You know what? I'll be honest, and I'm not trying to make something of nothing, but I think what interested me when we were doing that was that I was looking at an iconic paranormal image, and I would suggest that some of the most iconic paranormal images, there's probably three. There's the Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot photo, there's the Surgeon's Loch Ness photo, and then there's fill in the blank for whatever famous UFO photo, because there's a number of them.
Right.
But that X-Files poster captures that, that strength of the image. And you had Holy Cow initially, and when I was looking at it, I was trying to imagine the what it would be like if I saw a UFO in the sky, hovering there.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of the X-Files. I was thinking of the X-Files theme song as well, and you did get another television theme song. So I think it was it was a miss, but it wasn't a miss because it had nothing to do with it. It was just traveling other parallels that kept being close,
Right.
So yeah.
Right. So maybe 30%.
No, to be honest, I think funnily enough, maybe it's because I did it. I felt the feeling was closer to the feeling of the other one. I just think the exact detail was off. I think the sense of the Holy Cow, the iconic cryptid or paranormal image, and the TV television theme were all things I was trying to convey. I just don't think so. It's a weird one, but it sounds like a miss, but I don't think it's not really a miss. I'm not even sure of the description, but it picked up another transient version of what I was. All of them did, really.
Okay, so. Yeah, and it's good that you say that, because that kind of maybe kind of helps us segue into the whole ESP and trickery idea too.
Mm-hmm.
If I were doing this as a magician, I would be spot on. I would be 90% accurate to 100% accurate. That's one of the ways that I think you can tell a fake from the real thing, because this is not an exact science. We're dealing here with impressions, with feelings, with thoughts. We're not dealing with concrete things. When you're a magician, a stage mentalist, and you're trying to do something like this, you have a secret method of seeing what that information is. So you can make it look a little bit vaguer, but if I were doing this as a trick, I would see exactly what you're seeing. Like when I mentioned before about Jen and the thing in the mirror.
Yeah.
If I saw, when we were sort of practicing this earlier today, I could see an open door in the mirror behind her. So if that happened to be what she was looking at, or even if I said to her, I think there's something like a door, she would automatically shift her attention to the door.
Right.
And she would be amazed, because how do I know that? Well, I know it because I'm looking in the mirror behind her, but she doesn't know that. Yeah. So that's part of the whole trickery thing. If somebody is too accurate, they're probably a fake.
Right.
If it's 50, 60, 70%, then okay. And again, we're dealing with feelings too. We're not just dealing with concrete objects. I mean, if I were, one of the things I used to do as a mentalist was I would pass out 3 paperback books into the audience that were each, let's say, about 150 pages. And I would have somebody else from the audience pick a random number between 1 and 150. And then I would have, when we get that number, let's say 75, I'd have all 3 of those people turn to page 75 in their books and look at the first word on the page. And I could tell them right away what the first word was on the page. Now, the reason I could do that, I mean, it looked like a miracle, but the reason I could do that was because I had secret access to that information. So I could be 100% accurate. And if I wanted to fake it a little bit, like if they were looking at a word like UFO, and I said something like, I don't know, it has something to do with a disc. It's something round, something flying. That's the kind of thing that I would do as a mentalist. I wouldn't always give them the right answer right away.
And don't forget too, you did say circles when we would. I just didn't want to agree because you said a number of circles. But I thought, well, there's one circle there, but I just didn't say anything because I didn't want to go, well, there's one circle and lead too much.
Right.
But you certainly had circle when you were doing it as well. So
okay.
So yeah, no, I think it was pretty good. To be honest, I'm actually pretty impressed with what we just did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Applause. People usually applaud when I do these.
I like the fact that you got the pyramid because that's a big thing.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
And if I had spent more time, then maybe I could have zeroed in a lot better on both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would be hard. I mean, I've never done anything like this, but I would find that to be a little more hard to decipher through like your own emotions and everybody else's emotions that you could be tapping into. I mean, it would be kind of hard.
Well, let me tell a little story about Dean. When you and I several months ago were kind of doing some informal remote viewing experiments, I think I was becoming a little bit of an annoyance to Dean because in the beginning I tapped into a few things that seemed to be fairly accurate, but then as the day went on, I kept getting other impressions that I would text Dean, what does this mean? What does this date mean? Or what about this car? Who's Janice? And I see a yellow car in the driveway.
Hey, let's pause for a minute. I know this is important. I never got back to you. Know how you said who's Janice? And I went, I think my neighbor's name's Jeanette or something. I got her name on a piece of paper recently because I had an incident with, anyway, it's a long story with her dogs. But I told Jen about it, and her auntie at the time, Janice, was like was seriously sick or something, right?
Oh,
Jeanette, they had COVID.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it's weird. I after you told me who's Janice, and I'm like, well, my neighbor's Jeanette. But then I told Jen later that day, oh yeah, Ed said who's Janice, and she told me, oh well, my auntie Janice just got COVID, and I'm like, well, that's weird, because I don't know any Janices, so I thought maybe you'd picked up on Jen and me being close, and that's where the Janice came from. It's not like you said a really common name, like I don't know what's a really common girl's name.
Mary.
Yeah, I don't know Janices. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes to show another dimension of this whole paranormal psychic thing, is that it's not first of all, it's not an exact science, and I kind of think of it as being like a radio. A radio receiver. You can get various channels, and sometimes the channels bleed into each other, especially if there's a connection. They're different frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
So as you said, Dean, it may simply be that I was kind of bouncing off you and picking up something from Jen. Who knows?
I apologize. I never got back to you to tell you that. I meant to. I forgot all about it. But I remember at the time when Jen told me her auntie Janice just had COVID or something, I was like, get out. Ed just told me who's Janice. Like it was like the Exorcist cover article on 40 Times. It was another one of those, that's kind of weird moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I kept, one of the difficulties for me too is, as I said, throughout the day, I kept picking up these random thoughts, and I thought to myself, is this something I'm picking up from Dean? And, there were probably 100 of other things that I did pick up that I didn't call you about, because I figured, Dean is going to say, get out of here, leave me alone, get out of my mind. So I didn't. Yeah.
Do you remember any of them? Possibly?
I remember I did. Dean, I think I might have texted you not too long ago with a date that I asked if it had any significance for you. Gosh, I don't remember whether it was April or November, or if I had the time, I could look on my cell phone and see. But
I've forgotten. Right, I've forgotten some of it. It wasn't. If I didn't get back to you, it wasn't because I wasn't interested. I was.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
A million things, but the hits were very impressive. I do remember that. I think we're going to have you back on it, because we didn't even hit hypnotism. So I think we're going to have you back on again.
Yeah.
To do And then you're gonna hypnotize Jen live on air and have her quack like a duck and march around like a chicken.
Am I going to do that? I used to tell people when I do hypnotherapy, I'm not going to make you quack like a dog or cluck like a chicken, or quack like a dog or bark like a duck. But we'll see. Maybe I don't know about the on-air demonstration of hypnosis. It's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Dangerous. It is. I don't know how well I would be good at hypnotizing either, because I have a pretty good field up. So that would be interesting.
That actually could help. I suspect that you would make an excellent subject. Because it's not, I mean, this is one of the fallacies, and I know we need to go, but this is one of the fallacies about hypnosis. It's not about me controlling your mind.
Yeah.
It's about me helping you to relax.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
It's a combination of relaxation, concentration, and cooperation.
Yeah.
You cannot really hypnotize someone against their will.
Yeah.
Unless it's disguised hypnosis, but that's a different show.
We'll squeeze all those things into the next show, hopefully.
There we are. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Ed. We'll have Ed's contact details, or not so much his contact details, but his websites and the like, and his books on Amazon in the show notes, I believe. And of course, you can check out us at any time at either talkingweird.com or charlesfort.org. If you visit charlesfort.org and want to support the show, you can always buy one of our many lines of, an item from one of our big line of paranormal T-shirts, I suppose, including the John Keel Was Right T-shirt that I'm wearing at the moment, because John Keel was right. So thank you so much for listening in and watching, everybody. And Jen and Ed, do you want to close it out quick?
Sure. Well, this has been weird talking with you. But thank you very much, Dean and Jen. I really appreciate the chance to talk with you. I always enjoy talking with you both. And those thousands of people who are out there listening.
Yeah.
They will be by the end of the
hopefully.
So maybe not tonight, but that's probably what we'll have by the time everybody listens to it.
Yeah, I hope so.
So thanks. You're a great guest, Ed.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Wonderful hosts. The hosts and hostess with the mostest.
Thank you, everybody, and keep it weird.
Thank you. Keep it weird.
Thank you.